Good evening, folks. I hope everyone is doing well. So, I'm live on Facebook and Instagram as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to record myself as well this time so that I don't have any hiccups with the videos. But let me just get into it right now. So, today, my podcast, in my podcast, I'm going to be speaking about the factors inhibiting the northeast states of India becoming its own, sovereign nation state or independent nation or whatever you call it. Okay. In the book Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie, he captures the imaginations that is left at hand for the new young independent India. The book reflects on the aspirations of the children of India and the challenges that were posed after its independence from the colonial clutches of Britain since 1947. There's an author here. The author name is Gabriel Kolu, and I believe it is a she, if I'm not mistaken, but please feel free to correct me. Kolu, in her article, Adivasis and the Myth of Independence, Mahasweta Devi, which was published in 1999. The author points out that there are many versions of India as Indians. In Rushdie's epic novel, he reflects the independent India as, and I quote, the new myth, a collective fiction, a man-made fantasy, a dream, a fable, unquote. This is on page 44. The collective nature of a diverse India consists of many societies, religions, languages, and people groups from various states, various cultures, various historical backgrounds, and people from various communities, which reflects of today's India. So what we're speaking about here is a new kind of India and also an old kind of India, where India was always a dream, where India was a fable. It was like an aspiration that reflected upon many diverse people. And what happened in the northeast part of India is something that we will talk about. What happened over time? What happened during the colonial clutches of the British Empire? In other words, the independence of India since 1947, it was the end of colonization. Okay, sorry, somebody said, hello, looking so handsome in white, bro. Thank you very much, Miss Bond. We have a couple of people here on Instagram as well. Please feel free to comment, okay, guys. I really like interaction, and I really appreciate for those who have been very, loyal to me on this whole journey. And I'd like you guys to please come, feel free to, point out if, your opinions as well. And, let's try to cooperate, okay? So during the colonial exploitation, 1947 was when India got its independence, right? So it started building towards a free India, okay? So how far have we come as an Indian? How far have we come as a collective fantasy which has become real? According to the Pew Research, okay, it points out that the majority of Hindus and Muslim world population will be located in India by 2050. Well, I think that is certain, isn't it? The graph that I will present, or maybe I will sort of, analyze and give you in very, very simple terms, will probably give you an idea about what is India. And so over time, I will tell you, okay? So, the purpose of this podcast is to justify why and how Northeast region is part of India and why it cannot become its own sovereign nation state or an independent nation or independent territories, boroughs, whatever you call it. Okay. So here's the thing, mind you, okay, mind you, I have shared my other opinions about why Northeast India, particularly why Nagaland, could be, a nation state within a certain jurisdiction legally. I've already explained to you in my podcast too, by the way, my previous podcast. So feel free to check it out. So I did give you another solution to it. And just so you know, there are many solutions to it. And what I'm going to do is I will justify on another level, which is why, Northeast or why, particular state in Northeast cannot become its own sovereign nation state. However, the problem arises where there's a lot of people who would counter me. So if you look back in my podcast, a solution, I've shared to you a solution, okay, for many that might find this argument unsatisfactory. So, I come from a middle ground, and I hope you take me from that light, okay? The question here begs for me to ask, what are the social, political, geographical factors that inhibit the Northeast region of India becoming its own sovereign nation state, right? So let's get into the nitty gritty, okay? The government structure of India has evolved over the years. There's an author, G.Y.O.T. Richard B. Goit Richard B. His article, Nation Building or State Making India's Northeast Frontier of the Ambiguities of Nehruvian Developmentalism, 1950 to 1959. Okay, so this was published in the Contemporary South Asia, volume number 21, section 22 to 37. Okay, so this was published in 2013. The author points out that from 1930 onwards, India had focused on the ideas of self-government for an independent India. India's path of development had surged far and low in areas of national discipline, ideas pertaining to socialism and science, etc. However, the state's involvement was taken to central to the development of the nationalism, for only the state had the capacity to reach and to create a national political economy and to forge a united society. So what tells me here is that this nation-state building, particularly state building within India, within the country, has a very strong narrative and a very strong motivation, a very strong vision for India, that northeast part of India will become part of the nation-state building. Okay, part of the state building within the nation. Okay, and just so you know, this is in parallel to the 8 Northeast states that my narrative and my podcast is about. So the 8 Northeast states, they're very much essential part of the hot pot that India has been trying to, cook, okay? It will also focus on the states of this region in order to understand the government structure and the dynamics of India in the Northeast region. So particularly, I will delve more into the Nagaland state, the state of Nagaland. Why? Because I think, it is one amongst the 8 states of the Northeast region to find its own, legal status as part of the Indian territory. According to Hazarika, Hazarika is an author. Hazarika is, in his article, Land Conflict Identity in India's Northeast Negotiating the Future. This was published in 2004. So Hazarika points out that Nagaland has acquired Article 371A, far less known than Article 371 in relation to Kashmir, which prevents outsiders from buying land in the state, but equally very much powerful. Okay. This law passed by the Indian Constitution is directly related to the territorial rights within the state that protects the land and resources of the state and the people's right. So guys, whatever I'm saying here, these are all part of my research and these are all my writings. So if you have any questions regarding the relevancy of this narrative, please feel free to comment, and please, you can always email me, okay? All right, so the whole signatories, the whole group of signatories that was forming the states during the independent movement of India from the Northeast India was done by the representative of the states, each state within the 8 states, the people and the central government when India was forming its constitution and states after independence. The expectation here is that the Northeast region is part of India, the constitution, and therefore it inhibits or disqualifies legally for sovereignty from India. It also points out that state like Nagaland from the Northeast region of India is part of the Indian constitution, legally within the government structure. So, like I said I will talk to you about some of the aspects of why it is, part of India, okay? Socially, I will speak to you a little bit about the social science and its diversity, which contributes to the notion of a sort of a collective nation per se, which challenges, again, I told you about the myth, and the man-made fantasy of a fabled society in Rushdie's book. But instead, it also provides a very factual evidence as I sort of give you like a very, cohesive argument why, the evidence of a diverse society makes up for India as a collective nation, okay? But maybe I'll just give you a little bit of historical perspective when we speak about the social diversity, okay? So according to the myth that was probably, very true for Salman Rushdie during the independent or during the midnight before the independence of India, it had formed this new government structure before independence, right? However, it had to be implemented. So borders were pretty much imaginary before independence, or manipulated by the colonies. The colonists were pretty much the British who, dissected the lands within their jurisdiction and for their benefit. So a lot of, cropping up of land. You could call it gerrymandering. Maybe, I don't know if that's the correct word, but there is certain, manipulation that, the colonists had done, which sort of left us very injured in India and many other parts of the world. But nevertheless, we're on this narrative, and I think it's important for us to sort of think about it and talk about it, okay? So, according to Kolu again, 1999, in the article, prior to invasion of Aryans during 1500 BC, the Adivasis, who are the inhabitants of the Assam, which is part of the Northeast region, by the way, were living all over India with 67 million in 1991 census. So these were all, diverse people of, groups of people in Assam, which were living very, happily, I guess. So let me compare why, it is important for us to sort of look back and see why, there's other countries we can actually relate to, okay? So to begin with, independence in India has similarities to the American independence, right? Because of the, colonial influence, right? The British were there in America, and the British were there in India as well. So we have a common denominator. So India was facing exploitation, servitude by the colonials, and over time, India gave everything to Britain, or in a sense, the British people, stole it from India, literally. While on the other side of the continent of America, between 1775 to 1783, the transcontinental movement of liberation and independence from colonial rule began in the 13 colonies of the British North America. So the Americans were aspiring to let go of the crown, to get away from the clutches of the colonial powers and the web. They were not happy of the British rule. So during 1970 to 75, America had got its independence, just like how India had got independence during 1947. So there is legitimacy, and there is sort of a parallel for us to sort of look into it a little bit. Okay. Oh yes, I have some people here. Thanks for waving here, guys. I have Tali, I have Aman, I have Esther, Sungrim, Rio, yeah, Luna, I have Miss Bon, I have Kokti. Nice, thank you very much for coming in. Okay, guys, thanks for joining in. I'm here to comment if you ever have a question here. Okay. So let me get into it about the whole American independence here. According to Maclaren, okay, Maclaren, he writes in 1984, okay, he notes that the American War of Independence challenged the status quo of colonialism and exercised the practical doctrines of natural rights and popular sovereignty. The American independence had brought about a leveling social hierarchy, okay, where farmers, artisans, and the people were given a provincial legislature. So it sort of gave the people power, American people power, to vote against the British colonists, right? And the colonial oligarchy per se. And it was very genuine, and the representative stood its grounds, right? And that's how America became the hill, what do you call it? The shining hill, or the hill in the city in a shining hill. Was that the shining city in a hill? Something like that, right? So the American independence had given a distinct and a new direction to liberal democracy, industrial developments, and unified nations with a common goal, right? The newly independent America can be considered with India becoming independent from the British, like I said. Similar notions of independence and natural rights is practical. So it is practical. Why? Because when genuine responses from people actually come about from their hearts that we don't want. For example, you have the Gandhi's political movement, right, that led to the independence in 1947, right? And you have the South African Mandela movement, right? And so you have many movements like that when it comes from the people's voices. So that is very dynamic and that's very powerful. I just want to point that out, okay? So I'm going to quote again from another author here, actually the same author, Geert Richard, okay, R-E-C-H-A-R-D, okay? I think it's French, probably, I'm not sure. He points out about the limitations of making nation state in the frontier of Northeast India. So he's an author who studied about the Northeast India, okay? He also argues how the government of India is structured together with the Northeast region and in supporting the overall nation building because of India's ambitions. So, like I said again, here's the thing. India during 1947, prior to 1947, was very much, evolved, from understanding the parliament and the world system. So what they did was they focused on the state building within the, domestic politics per se. This is very important, okay? This is very important to understand. So, the author also goes on further to reiterate And I quote, by examining development schemes in the Northeast Frontier Agency, NEFA, today's Arunachal Pradesh, in 1950s and 1960s, hitherto scarcely administered region, these were primary mode of state building. Okay, so Arunachal Pradesh was part of the among the 8 states in the Northeast region, which was an administered region under the governing body of the Indian Constitution per se. So yes, the Indian government was playing a big role already, and it was, it goes back to 1950s and 60s and 40s, So let me go ahead and move on towards the religion part of the northeast part of India per se, and India. Let me compare and contrast. Religion is also relevant to Northeast India because of its diversity in religious faiths. According to Hackett, in the article, his name is Conrad Hackett, the article, by 2050, India to have world's largest population of Hindus and Muslims. This was published in 2015, April 21. This was published in the Pew Research. For those who have not come across Pew Research, it's a very good database for finding out statistics about certain numbers that you're interested in. So I would encourage you to actually have a look at it. According to Hackett, and I quote, India is already home to most of the world's Hindus. In 2010, 94% of the world's Hindus lived in India. This is expected to remain true in 2050. When 1.3 billions are projected to live in this country, but India is also expected to have 311 Muslims in 2050. So this is about 11% of the global total, okay, making it the country with the largest population of Muslims in the world. I think currently Indonesia has the highest population of Muslims anywhere else in the world. But I suppose it is changing according to the research, which is found in Pew Research Center, okay. What about the other religion, you say? Well, you have 1.3 billion Hindus, that totals to 94% already living in India, and you have 1.3 millions, that is approximately 15% of population of Muslims already. The other religious minorities consist of 22.7%, okay, so you have Sikhs, you have, I think, maybe Zoroastrianism, and I don't know. It's okay. So Christians make up about 2.2%. So that's a very small number. But coming to think of it, within this narrative, Northeast India has a very high population of Christians. Okay, so I think the world doesn't know much about it, but I'm pretty sure, like over time, the world will know that there's many Christians in Northeast part of India, which is part of the diversity of India, and we have to sort of keep that helm within this political narrative as we, ride along this whole Modi wave. I think this is very important that, religious practices and beliefs and its diversity in India needs to be kept sacred within this Constitution of India legally, right? I've heard some stories, but let's not delve too much into it. If you have any questions about anything, please feel free to email me or comment down below, okay? Besides that, I think among the Northeast states, Assam and Manipur has the highest Hindus and Muslim populations. Yes, and Nagaland and Mizoram has the highest population of Christians, okay? And the others are usually minor religions, or usually Hindus per se, and Muslims too. Right. So, what are the 8 states? The 8 states of Northeast region of India are: number 1, Assam; number 2, Arunachal Pradesh; number 3, Manipur; Meghalaya; Mizoram, Nagaland, Sikkim, and Tripura. So these are the 8 states that I'm actually talking to you about, okay? These are all alphabetical, okay? So these states are part of India and it is structured democratically within the Indian parliament system, right? And for those who are abroad or who don't live in India, we ourselves we're called Northeasterners, or people from Northeast India. We usually have a little bit of Mongolic features or East Asian features, or maybe a mix of it. Unlike the majority of Indians who are in the mainland India. So, and usually our religion is also a little different. Okay. The geography and the borders are also very crucial in the state building process, as I've already spoken to you about. Why? Because each state practices its own laws under its Constitution of India. However, there are cultural laws, there are specific laws within the state which is very unique from many other countries. So the people from Nagaland are called Nagas, the people from Assam are called Assamese or Adivasis, and the people from Mizoram are called Mizos, and the people from Manipur are Metis, I think. Yes, Metis, and so on and so forth. Okay, we have a lot of various diverse languages, tribes, and so on and so forth. For those who are not much aware of Northeast India. Okay, I myself am from Nagaland, by the way. So, why I said I'm going to be focusing on Nagaland per se when I speak about, this whole narrative is because, the signatories for forming the state of Nagaland during, 1947 post and pre had approved to form the state with the Indian government during Jawaharlal Nehru, who was then the first Prime Minister of India during independence. I believe there's other states who carries a lot more weight to when it comes to like how it is to be an Indian state per se, for example, like Manipur. But let me just delve more into the Nagaland perspective here. The Constitution of India, the 13th Amendment Act 1962, particularly Article 371A, Section 1, was signed during the Gandhi's party government after the independence of India. Article 371A was a special provision law that was passed with the respect of the state of Nagaland. Number one, notwithstanding anything in this constitution, no act of parliament in respect of 1. Religious or social practices of Nagas, Naga customary laws and procedures, administration of civil and criminal justice involving decisions according to the Naga customary law, ownership and transfer of land and its resources. So these are some of the laws within the state of Nagaland, which cannot be, touched by the Indian government or the Constitution of India, because according to the Constitution, it legally assures and approves of this law. Okay. So anyways, let me just kind of clarify with the geography as well. Why geography is very critical in this podcast is because of border issues with the neighboring countries. Okay, we do, any country or any place which has a lot of neighbors seems to have some problems every time, and especially neighbors with differences. Okay, Northeast region is located between 5 countries, China, and I will include Tibet as well with China, Myanmar, Burma, Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan. Okay, so it certainly probes for like a territorial conflict when one country or state claims more land, causing internal disputes that leads to military outfit problems, as we have a lot in the northeast part of India, like the undergrounds. And, we have a lot of political battles too in the domestic political narrative and also in the national political battles. Because what Modi has been doing he is very much on a very, let me just put it this way, his bargaining hand for the Northeast India uh, is very strong when it comes to Beijing. Okay, so here's some author here. Why I say this whole Northeast part and the border and geography issue is very hot is because China has been wanting to be a part of, China wants part of the Northeast land, per se. And I think the cartographers, the Chinese cartographers have simply incorporated Arunachal into Tibet. And I think they did this decades ago, indicating that they have gained about probably 90,000 square kilometers in the Indian territory, without Delhi having to do anything about it. But that is the Indian narrative, okay? So the Modi's China strategy, okay, according to Kanti Bajpai, in the article Narendra Modi's Pakistan and China Policy, assertive bilateral diplomacy, active coalition diplomacy, unquote. So he points out, Mr. Kanti Bajpai, that, and I quote, the core objective is the strength of New Delhi's bargaining hand with Beijing by assembling an anti-China coalition. With Pakistan, Modi had tried to make terrorism the centerpiece of interaction. It's not about Kashmir, okay? It's about terrorism, okay? That's the main goal here, guys. With China, he has insisted that progress on the border settlement will be vital to the normal relationship and not the other way around, unquote. So as we see, the foreign policy of Modi is very realistic, or you would say realist, in a very theoretical approach. If you study international relations or political science or diplomacy or any of that sort, it could be realist and it could be very pragmatic too, if you come to think of it. Now, I said about geography, right? So there is a clash, okay, with the eastern borders and the Indian borders in the Himalayas in the northeast part of India. And where we are at the cusp of a new dawn, per se, and I think India has been very assertive in claiming it. So let's see what the Chinese has to do about it, or are planning to do about it, okay? So now I think I've spoken to you about the social aspect of the collective fiction, a man-made fantasy, a dream, where Salman Rushdie points out that before the independence, it was almost like a dream that India will be a diverse society, and apparently it came true, right? I'm going to quote another sentence here from Kolu's work again. According to Kolu in 1999, in his article, I quote, Adivasis and the Myth of Independence, Mahasweta Devi. Okay, that's the article. He points out, the author talks about Mahasweta Devi, who was a Bengali writer from the East India. She mentions about the lives of the dispossessed people of India, particularly the Dalits, untouchables, the low caste, the peasants, the people living in the northeast part of India, like the Adivasis during the colonial years, and even goes back on how it was an integral part of the ancient society of India. So, with that said, let me sort of conclude with this narrative here. Salman Rushdie's novel on Indian independence, right, The Midnight Children, it sort of presented a fictional construct of India, a fictional narrative, the new myth, a collective fiction, a man-made fantasy, a dream, a fable, or I would say it's a magic. And Kolu, he points out that The Midnight Children participates in the proliferation of myths of independent India, while simultaneously exposing their fictionality and occasionally challenging their truth value. And I quote, unquote, there is a truth value here. We're living and breathing the Indian air. We're living and breathing, we're spending Indian money. We Northeast people, we have to realize, that the past will remain all the time, will remain with us. It'll never forget. But the future lies on us. The future lies on the new generation and how we mold and how we will move forward. I think this is very important. Okay, and I speak to the world as well. It's not just people from the northeast part of India, but lessons to be learned from us as well and from them. Okay, so it's a give and take.